Survivor, the greatest social experiment in the history of television. Millions watch at home, thousands apply every year, hundreds get the opportunity to play, and an even smaller number can say they've won.
Winner of Survivor Redemption Island, Rob!
Most of the time, the dream of winning Survivor ends when your torch is snuffed and you're voted off the island. But for a select few, things happen a little differently. Evacuations are so scary, we even have a season's theme based on evacuated players. Today, we'll be breaking down the 10 most devastating Survivor evacuations of all time, and we are joined by content creator Snuff to break it all down.
After a shocking end to his first appearance in Season 16, Micronesia, Eric Reichenbach returned as a favourite on Caramone and had certainly improved his understanding of the game since giving up individual immunity to Natalie Bolton. However, on day 36, after Brenda was voted out at Tribal Council, Eric began to feel lightheaded, prompting the medical team to come to camp and assess Eric's blood pressure. Unfortunately for Eric, his time in the game was cut short, with medical ruling that his blood pressure was too low and he would be unable to compete in the remainder of the game. While Eric did make it deep into the end game, he was on the outs attracting votes at 2 of his last 3 tribal councils. Eric's medical evacuation meant that he left in the exact same position, 5th, as he did in Micronesia.
Number 9, Pakusack. Many will remember Pat simply from recency bias competing in Survivor David vs. Goliath, but I would argue that if that season wasn't so widely loved by the community and such a recent season, then Pat would be the most forgettable player on this list. Pat took the reins on building the shelter early on for the David tribe, and despite his hard work, many of his tribe mates found him to be bossy and overbearing. After the first immunity challenge of the season, he was medically evacuated from the game due to a freak off-camera accident on the tribe's boat escort back to camp. From exit interviews, it was later stated that Pat would probably have been voted out anyway, but this evacuation left a weird taste in the mouth during the first episode of an otherwise top-tier season. And to make this type of evacuation even more insane, we have another player later in this video that will also be evacuated during the first episode of their season.
Coming in at number 8 is Neil Gottlieb from Survivor Ko-Rong, who formed a strong alliance with Aubrey Bracco early in the game, going on to find a hidden immunity idol on day 10, which he hid from his tribe mates until finally revealing to Aubrey at the merge. Neil's game came crashing back down to earth though in a season riddled with medical evacuations, as the medical team visited the tribe camp to assess his knee, concerned that an open wound could lead to a life-threatening infection. As a result of this, Neil was pulled from the game, placing him on the jury, which he was then later removed from after Michelle won an advantage on day 38, further adding salt to the wound.
Number 7, Bruce Kangei. Competing on Survivor Panama Exile Island, Bruce was an original member of the Lamina tribe before swapping into Kasaya and eventually making the merge. Bruce was able to last 25 days into the game before being medically evacuated for severe stomach pain and being unable to pass a deuce. Although Bruce's time on Survivor was overshadowed by some of the biggest players of all time, his claim to fame is being a member of the iconic Kasaya tribe. Not the Kasaya 1.0 where I can honestly only name Sari, but the infamous Kasaya 2.0, consisting of Courtney, Danielle, Shane, Sari, Aris, and of course Bruce. Bruce was regarded as the glue holding this dysfunctional tribe together.
At number 6, there has never been a player as polarizing as Colby Cumbie. Colton found himself on the outs in one world with the tribes divided by gender, coming into possession of a hidden immunity idol which he gave to Sabrina. Colton certainly caused chaos in his short stint on the island, encouraging his tribe to give up immunity in one of the most foolish moves in Survivor history. And after the tribe swap, Colton emerged as the mastermind in the game, sitting in the driver's seat and helping to blindside Monica Culpepper, but on day 16, he complained he was feeling unwell, which Troyzan put down to dehydration. However, upon assessment from the medical team, he was diagnosed with acute appendicitis and pulled from the game with an idol in his pocket, upsetting his closest ally, Alicia. His departure from the game certainly caused a massive stir around camp, with fellow ally Kat concerned that Colton's appendicitis may have been contagious.
Number 5, Jackson Fox. Yes, the first player eliminated during Survivor 42, as Jackson was evacuated on day 3 before the first immunity challenge. I had a lot to say about this during my episode 1 breakdown of the season, and I'm going to try to take a much more positive approach this time around. Actually, I can't. Whenever I think about the circumstances of Jackson's evacuation, it really stings. Jackson's lithium withdrawal kicked in and became a health risk while he was on the island, forcing his evacuation on day 3. It doesn't feel right that Jackson kept this a secret from the producers until moments before the game started. And it feels even worse that the producers decided to have him start the game even though they knew he probably wouldn't be able to stick around. It's not fair for his tribe mates, and if it wasn't for Jonathan being such a beast, Taku could have been screwed going into the merge. And it also takes the spot away from someone else whose dream it is to play Survivor.
Terry Dietz was one of the greatest players at the time of his first season, winning a record-breaking 8 individual challenges, a record which still remains to this day, so there were plenty of excited fans when he was voted in for a second chance on Survivor Cambodia. He started the game strong, forming an old-school alliance with the likes of Wigglesworth, Wu, and his former adversary Otis's brother, Vitus. He also formed a strong bond with Abi Maria, who found herself feeling alienated before being swapped into a minority alongside Kelly Wentworth. His game came to an end on night 13 though, when Jeff Probst arrived at camp to pull Terry aside, informing him that his son, Danny, had been hospitalized and his family wanted him to return, pulling him from the game. It was revealed at the reunion that Danny had received a successful heart transplant.
Number 3, the beast mode cowboy Caleb Reynolds. Somehow this dude has had an impressive reality TV career, originally competing on Big Brother until transitioning into Survivor with its 32nd and 34th season. Caleb lasted 9 days in both his Survivor appearances, but for the sake of this video we are obviously focusing on his first appearance in Survivor Ko Rong. As you can tell by this video, that season was filled with medical evacuations, as Caleb was evacuated on day 9, followed by Neil on day 19 and Joe on day 34. Caleb put his heart and soul into the challenges, and it was just too much after a scary evacuation caused Jeff to call in the chopper and airlift Caleb out of the game with severe heat stroke. This evacuation was unprecedented at the time, as we got a sneak peek of what it's like to film an episode of Survivor with an insanely underwhelming reward on the line. Game changer.
It's hot just standing here watching you guys. Caleb! Is that it? Yeah! Dude, he pulls it out!
Need medical.
Take a look at Caleb, too! Alright, let's go. We need water! Water!
2 ways you leave this game other than being voted out, and that's quitting, which you clearly are not doing. And that is a doctor saying they are too worried about you to let you continue.
At number 2 is a controversial figure, but a moment in Survivor history that completely changed the way the season played out. Season 2, Survivor the Australian Outback, was the most viewed season in history, and 31.32 million people tuned in to watch a scary moment play out with Michael Scoopin medically evacuated. It looked like Kucha would enter the merge with a 6-4 majority, and Scoopin was the tribe's leader, having a strong grip on the game, but things changed while he was tending to the fire, inhaling too much smoke and passing out over the fire. He ended up with severe burns to his hands and shoulder, rushing to the dam to get minor reprieve from the pain, and Scoopin narrowly avoided much more serious injuries to his face, which was fortunately kept safe by his hat. The medical team were rushed into camp and called for him to be airlifted from the game, leaving his tribe in shock, and when news reached the opposing tribe Ogre, the mood was bittersweet. Scoopin's medical evacuation was made even more monumental by the fact that, had he not left the game, existing fractures within Ogre Corps that saw Jerry on the outs would have meant that the Kucha tribe would have likely ended up pagonging the remaining Ogre Corps, and we would have ended up with a very different result, as either of Alicia, Elizabeth, Nick, Roger, Scoopin, or Varna would have left the game on day 42 $1 million richer.
Number 1, Russell Swan. The time in Survivor history, Jeff Probst has stated he thought a contestant was going to lose his life. I know, dramatic, terrifying, Survivor's real. Russell's leadership in Samoa saw his tribe dominate until he was abruptly pulled from the game in the most frightening medical evacuation in the show's history due to severe dehydration. I must say, there's just way too many Russells in the Survivor community. We have Russell Swan, Russell Hantz, and Russell Muscle TV. If you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel and help me pass Russell Hantz in subscribers.